everybody, to another episode of Deconstructing the Narrative. I am your host, and I am also a content creator with SADA Collective. My name is Erica Seha, and today I'm joined by my lovely guest, Dominic. How are you, Dominic?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Awesome. I'm so great. So it's exciting because I actually met Dominic through one of our conversation pit sessions. So I'm really excited to kind of dive deeper into what he does and kind of share his story with you guys. Awesome. So just to begin, Dominic, can you kind of give us a little bit of a background on what your role in the creative industry is at the current moment?
Yeah, that's a fun question. I feel like as probably for many artists, it's been an evolving process to figure out where you fit in this whole grand scheme. I originally got into the creative industries because I was a commercial director, and I really wanted to direct. I wanted to write films. I wanted to direct films. And so that's really where I put a lot of my attention in my early days. And then I realized I needed a producer, and I didn't really have the contacts. And when I was a teenager and in my early 20s to know to have a whole Rolodex of producers. So I started reading books and learned that skill myself, and produced a lot of my own work. So I ended up producing a lot of the stuff I directed. So I kind of became this hybrid, producer director guy. And that was sort of a hat that I wore for a while. And just recently in the last couple of years, I've been able to start transitioning back into focusing more on my artistic disciplines and figuring out, a little bit more of the particular projects that I want to apply my artistic lens to. So I consider myself an artist first. I do have the skills of a producer, and I enjoy producing. However, I'm not really a hired gun as a producer anymore. I like to apply that skill to work with the artists that I represent and for myself.
Awesome. Super cool. And can you kind of dive a little bit deeper, I guess, into some recent projects that you've been working on, and kind of share this with us and what that's looking like right now?
Totally. We have produced and packaged, we as in Soulmatter, my creative firm. We've been working on this year. I mean, this whole year's been a journey, 2020. But what most recently, what we've done, I produced a documentary called Relics of New York, and that's we're almost through post on it, but it's essentially unpacking the conversation about gentrification in New York City through the lens of local stories and neighborhood stories. And it was a project that was pitched to me by one of the directors on my roster. He goes by Dot Art, and really visionary filmmaker, really interesting content, very millennial, very video game referential. It's just really fun, kind of MTV style content. Right before that, the project that brought me from LA to New York is a project called A Climb to the Top, which is a combination of a feature documentary film, a TV series, and a learning platform with one of my business partners here, who's an executive coach on Wall Street. His name's Chuck Garcia.
Super
and
cool.
we got a couple cool things in the pipe too.
So awesome. So cool. And I guess, since you're working, I know you said you're working in New York right now, and a lot of your stuff kind of centers around, everything that's going on in New York, in terms of gentrification and stuff like that. Can you kind of detail, every time I get a New York artist, I'm really keen on asking them about, their views on the art world over there versus the art world, in Los Angeles. And I know you said you're moving back here. So you can kind of detail for others, because I also lived in New York. I went to Parsons for a little bit. And I know just from being there for a short time, how, different the art scenes are, and they're both so vital for the art community as a whole. So if you can kind of just detail, I guess, in your realm, what are some experiences you've had that have differed in New York from like LA in terms of the art or creative scene?
Totally. I mean, I fucking love New York and LA creatives. They're my heroes. I have learned so much from the artists in both of these communities, and they inspire me every day. I think primarily what I've experienced in LA is that unless you have enough business savvy and enough business infrastructure, doing independent works is pretty slow. It's not necessarily hard. It's not necessarily any harder than it would be anywhere else. It always takes a lot of effort to do independent creative projects, but I think LA, I experienced a lot of infinite maybes, right? People assent to your idea. They think it's great. They think it's cool, but there's sort of this like, what happens next thing that I noticed a lot in LA. So I started really gravitating to some of my contacts in New York because it was more about yeah, I was getting answers to things very quickly. If it was a no, it was a no. If it was a, come back with something better, that's what I did. And
Right.
I started learning about creating more of a business infrastructure for myself, with my partners in New York. Now, when it comes to the creatives in New York, I think there's a lot. One of the things I love is that New York City is our backdrop. We go out and we just make stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
no one really can stop us, And I think
Mhm.
LA is a little bit more of a system.
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, it's just such vastly different like spaces for creating and stuff.
Yeah.
I noticed that as well. Yeah, and I like how you kind of mentioned that, people in New York are very much more so straight up. And I feel like as a creative, that's the best thing you could have. I feel like kind of beating around the bush, which is what you'll kind of find in LA, can be detrimental because like you
Yeah.
kind of just need to know what's going on so that you can make the change and like move forward. So I like that you mentioned
Yes.
that. That's definitely something that I noticed as well. Awesome. And then I kind of want to, I guess, dive a little bit, deeper into your past, prior to everything that you kind of picked up, even when you picked up, filming and producing. I kind of want to talk to you about like, your upcoming and kind of what led you into the creative industry. So can you kind of give us a background on, I guess, what that looked like and kind of why you ended up choosing to go the creative route, for your career?
Creative route chose me.
Yeah.
How far back you want me to go?
I don't know. I guess like what are your first memories like as a creative? Like what kind of inspired you to, I guess, even just to take up film or take up producing?
Yeah. Oh man, I got some fun stories for this one. The earliest sort of like creative spark that I really clearly recall is that I was in my dad's office when I was 5 years old, and he had a Polaroid that was just used for work stuff. It was just sitting there in his office. And I picked it up, I started farting around with it. And he said my dad told me to put it down because he was going to show me how to use it, but I needed to wait like a half hour or something. And I pushed the shutter button, half a second later. That's my first photograph that I ever took. And I actually have it on my desktop right now. I have a scan of it.
That's
I
amazing.
still have the hard copy from that Polaroid. And that was just kind of, there's a little bit of a, I don't know. We always like that. We have in terms of the brand, we focus on work that we feel like is really meaningful, but there's a little bit of a punk edge to it as well. We like to do stuff that's not allowed. So I think I can trace that back to being 5 and breaking the rules. But when I was 10, I saw, The Lord of the Rings for the first time. And actually it was like when Blockbuster was doing we rented it on VHS, The Two Towers, when it came out. And it was like my friend's birthday party or something. And his dad, after we watched the film, literally handed us a Hi8 video camera and said, why don't you guys go shoot your own thing? And from that weekend, I mean, until to date, I have not put cameras down. So I'm extremely great. I mean,
Awesome.
That's one of those things that parents, your shit matters. The fact that, I got an invitation when I was 10 to go shoot a movie in a living room, and here we are. So
super cool. I love that. I love that you remember this stuff too, because a lot of the times I ask this question and people will get kind of stuck. They're like, I don't know. And I'm like, that's something you should just know. I feel like you just know when you had that like moment when you're a kid, and that's just like the moment that you knew that this is like what found you, So I love that you can recall that. That's super dope.
Yep.
Cool. And I know you just kind of mentioned really briefly how, Soulmatter, your company kind of focuses a lot on the storytelling. And I know that's something we talked about a little bit in, the conversation pit session as well. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about that because, the really like important reason that we're doing this series is to really dive in on storytelling for artists. That's the main thing that we focus on, I guess, with SADA as a whole, is kind of uncovering those narratives, because we really believe that that's what kind of is so important, to kind of make artists unique and stand out. So can you kind of talk a little bit about, I guess, the basis, like dive a little bit deeper into that basis of Soulmatter and why you guys chose to really hone in on that storytelling aspect? And then also talk with me a little bit about why you feel that is so important for an artist or a creative in this industry.
Yeah, you might have to come back to me on that second question, but I will definitely get into the first one. The impetus for starting Soulmatter happened when I grew up in Arizona, but I was living in Charleston, South Carolina at the time. I spent most of my teenage years there, and I was riding my bicycle through downtown Charleston, and I got hit by a car and fractured my skull and lost all my front teeth. And it was a financial disaster. It was, I lost my house. I moved back in with my parents. It was like the whole, like the cascading disasters. And at the time I was really working hard to be a somewhat stable, commercial director in a very small market, very few opportunities. It was challenging. And dealing with the accident and realizing that you can be doing everything right. You can be going straight through a green light and still get derailed. I just realized that I needed to spend my life doing things that I thought mattered for myself.
Right.
Period.
Definitely.
And what happened, I basically just kind of had to like rebuild my life. And that was really how I discovered therapy. And I deconstructed a lot of, I grew up in a conservative household. I deconstructed a lot of my sort of religious and spiritual ideas and philosophies. And I got centered on this idea that art is the output. It's the language of the soul. And that just kind of stuck with me. This word, this soul mattered, like you taking stuff that it's kind of a layer above your imagination. It's like your essence, and you're taking a piece of you. You're taking this infinite source and you're turning it into an object. You're turning it into something that people can engage with. And so the germ of Soulmatter got planted in my head. And, I did all the therapy. I did all the treatments. I got myself back on my feet. And a couple of years later, I moved to Los Angeles. And for a few months, I kicked around the idea of being a commercial director. I started talking with the agencies. I got rostered pretty quick, which I was not expecting. I was expecting for that to be, a fight. And then 6 months into that relationship, the agency closed its doors, and I was, left with really nothing to show for that experience. And I just thought, once again, this idea popped up in my head that was Soulmatter. What is that? And so I just bought the domains. I set up the website, and I was like, I don't really know. I'm a director. I'm going to do a firm. I don't really know what that means, but I have to explore this idea. And I think one of the really beautiful things about Soulmatter is that the brand has been a meditation, an artistic meditation for me to discover what it means in these different chapters of my life. And what it meant first was that with all of the experience I had in commercial filmmaking, I really wanted to do content that was more meaningful to me. I didn't want to be pitching and spending all my energy on brands that I wasn't really connecting with, on campaigns I didn't really care about. And not that they're all like that, because there's some really cool things happening commercially as well. But it just got me thinking about, like, what would it mean for me to do more meaningful content for myself? And, does this word content really matter? Can we make art? What can we do? What can I do with my skills? And so that's really where the brand started. And the chapter we're in now is what I call Start a Fire. And that's the idea behind where we are now, is that, we don't solve problems. We're cultural antagonists. We want to ask a question that leads to something greater, that leads to a discourse, that leads to engagement with each other. And we'll see what happens next. I don't know.
Definitely. That's so cool. And what would you say, I guess this is kind of going back to that second part of the question, kind of like leans off of that. What would you say is the importance for any creative in this industry? Why is it so crucial that we kind of focus as creatives, I guess, on our narrative, or on our story, and on portraying that? Because, I feel like there's a lot of mumbo jumbo, like, within the social media, because we have the social media sphere, and obviously, like, you put up your art as an artist, and you kind of feel like the need to conform to everything that you're seeing online. So there's kind of this breakup of artists that are, working to tell their story, and artists that are working to get the bag, which is fine and great. But why is it so crucial for us as creatives in this time, especially with the way society is going right now, to kind of tell our story and focus on that narrative aspect of our work?
That's a cool question. I think I would first like to say, maybe this is a conversation for later, but I think there is a pretty distinct difference between a creative professional and an artist. And it's not an ego thing. It's your discipline. It's where you want to be in the market and how you want to present yourself. there's a lot of really fucking cool creative professionals that I work with every day. So it's no slight to anyone. But I did decide that I wanted to be an artist. And the reason is that, you know, your perspective is your superpower.
Yeah.
And when you focus on your narrative and what has led you to the moment that you're in, first, I mean, there's the intention of being present and understanding the space that you're occupying as a creative person, as a, you know, as an artist, as just a soul traversing this earth. But I think, you know, your narrative and interpreting whatever meaning that you want from your narrative is, I mean, that is sort of your calling or your vocation. So I think that's really where I think artists like focusing on your story, because I mean, that's the things you're going to leave behind. And the way that the transition that I made in my mind around this theme is that instead of focusing on strictly like doing as many projects as possible, winning as many pitches as possible, is that I don't want to pitch. I want to have discussions, and I would rather do as few projects as humanly possible to get across the narrative that I can uniquely tell to the world. I'm not going for quantity. I'm really going for excellence.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I think that's really important. I really like that you touched on, you know, because I feel like a lot of the time I say that and people think that I'm like bagging on people who are creative professionals or who make money as a creative, which never is the case. But I really do find that there is such an importance of nailing in on this storytelling aspect. And I feel like we've lost a lot of that. So I really like that you kind of detailed that difference because there is a huge difference. And I think both ways you go, it's kind of a choice that you make as a creative. Like, what is my goal here? What am I trying to do? But I feel like, yeah, if you're working as an artist, it is very important to kind of nail in on what that narrative and what that background is, because I feel like that's what kind of separates you from everybody else that's out there. You know, I feel like there's artists of all kinds now. Like we were so innovative at this point, and like to be able to like really connect with someone, I feel like I really need to just like understand their story. You know what I mean? Because like we see finished products on Instagram and like, okay, but what happened like behind the scenes? What went into making that? Why did you want to like create this? You know what I mean? And usually when I hear those backgrounds, I connect with a piece so much more than if I just see something online. You know, it's just so much of a deeper experience. So I really love that.
Maybe we can look at these terms and say, you know, I think the narrative, the story of you as an artist, I mean, maybe we just call that brand. You know what I mean? Like that's where you come from. It's your thing. And who has your story? Literally nobody. You know, if you want to stand out in the market, be you. You know, don't be like, anytime that you're told, especially as an artist, that you need to have something. Oh, well, you got to have LinkedIn. Well, you got to have Instagram. Well, you got to. You don't need any of those things. You're an artist. You're the narrator. You dictate the format. What do you want to do?
And how are you going to tell your story? That's totally up to you. Yes, I love that.
Put us behind your eyeballs. You know, give us your perspective.
Exactly. 100%. I love that. Cool. So kind of moving over, I kind of want to talk with you a little bit about like your dream, I guess, project or dream goal for your career, especially with like the industry that you're working in. There's so many opportunities and stuff. So what is like a dream project or a dream even artist or person that you would like to work with sometime in your career?
That's a good question. I feel like, you know, this is going to be a little bit of a cheat to that question, but I have 4 brothers. My youngest 2 brothers are adopted from Liberia, and they joined our family when I was 15. And they're both really talented musicians and music producers. Oh, wow. And budding recording artists. And I think my dream project is to tell our story. Yeah, my dream collaboration is collaborate with my brothers.
That's awesome. That's super cool. Yeah, and just tell a story of like that because that's a big, transition to move into a family like that, and having,
we could go all day.
That's amazing. That's awesome. That's super cool. Yeah, and that would touch a lot of families too, or a lot of kids who like go through that same, that same thing and what that means. I guess within that transition process, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. And then what is something that you like know now that you wish would have known back then? And by saying that, I mean like what is something that throughout like the trial and error of your career thus far that you've learned that you would lend as advice to like your younger self when you were first starting out as a creative?
think the first thing that comes to mind, and I would recommend, there's a book by Mark Randolph, who was Netflix's first CEO. And the book is called That Will Never Work. And really the main takeaway that I got from that book, that he says with no uncertain terms, is that nobody knows anything. And when you have, I look at myself, and I remember when I was younger, I mean, I would take, I don't know, whatever it was, like a 7D, whatever was the hot camera at the time. That was like my thing. I would go on the weekends and I would just shoot black and white silent films. And like, that was just what I liked doing. And I would take my film SLR cameras and I'd go shoot 35 millimeter black and white photos of my city and my friends and whatever. And the industry continually, with all the voices, and I don't blame the industry. I take full responsibility for my own actions. With all the voices spurring around the industry, I started setting my own tendencies and my own preferences aside because I wanted to be more commercial. I wanted to get a reel that agencies wanted to look at. I wanted to, yada, yada, yada. Don't do that. Right? Like, do your shit, make your shit, make the shit that you like, that when you look at it, it lights you up. And that's the rule. As an artist, I think, again, it's kind of, there's this like creative professional artist thing. Like if you're just in it to have a thriving creative professional career, then I mean, make whatever reel you want and go pitch to the agencies you want to work with and things like that. And there's sort of a simplicity to it. And as an artist, make the things that light you up and accompany that with business savvy, so you know how to position yourself so that you can really engage in your disciplines and the things that light you up without having to make sacrifices.
Definitely. Yeah. And just learning how to build that brand story and share it is so important too, because I feel like, half of the battle is coming up with your story. And then I think the other half is also being able to portray that to the world, and that's why I kind of loved a lot that, we met in this conversation pit that was geared around marketing, because I feel like a lot of people look at marketing like such a business oriented situation, and they fail to realize that like you need to have those skills in order to like tell your brand story, you know what I mean? Your story, and I think that that's something that a lot of artists like lack knowledge in, is, the ability to create that platform and what that looks like. So yeah, it's definitely really important in the process of being able to share your work, you know what I mean? And being able to share your art. And I think that's
I think, like branding as an artist, like you don't need to come up with your story. You need to be honest. And you obviously like be an innovator, make it interesting, like make the format unquestionable, do it with intention, but be vulnerable. I mean, that's the only way that you're going to be able to express your unique, your unique soul, is that you put yourself on display.
Definitely. And what are some tips, I guess, since you do work a lot in the industry, that you would have for, now that I'm on the topic, for a younger artist who's learning kind of how to navigate this social space, and how to brand themselves and market themselves correctly so that they can have the platform to tell their story in that manner? What are some tips and tricks that you would have for artists to kind of, or creatives to kind of navigate how to do that?
Man, I could go all night on that question. I think the first thing is steel yourself with real information. Read books. I have this motto that I use, which is, we believe is not necessary if it's true. So if you have to start a sentence with "we believe" and you're always talking about we and us and this, then I'm not really hearing your message. I want to know what you believe by the format, by the work that I'm seeing, by what you're doing. And I mean, you got to have skills to do that. You got to work with, you got to have good copywriting. And delegation is a big part of this. I think, and I'm careful with this because I think for artists, it's super easy to be lazy and be like, oh, well, I'm not good at this, so let me just work with this person. And then things happen, like you lose equity in your company. You get taken advantage of. Because you don't have the business acumen and the interpersonal savvy to be able to command those environments and understand what your intention is, what you're doing there. So I think the first thing is read all the books. You can know all the information. You can take away all the guesswork by reading the books. And, I think it's really easy. And I've been taking screenshots all week from these ads for these done for you agency and, you know, the hands off passive income stuff. And it's like, look, passive income is important, but do you want a done for you life? I want you to be a master. I want to be a master. And it's like, learn the skill sets so that you know that when you are staffing up your big project, you know, finances are in the bank, you know exactly what to do. You know what agreements you need, you know who to hire, you know, like you can staff up accordingly and feel like you're in a responsible environment, you know, to be able to deliver your vision.
Definitely. Yeah, I think those are all great tips. And I think, yeah, like you said, you know, just I think the reading thing is so important too. I feel like a lot of people like will go on and they'll just like look at what they see and they'll kind of just implement those, which is also great. But I think, yeah, reading, I think a lot of people don't read anymore. You know what I mean? And I think it's so important for like anything, learning anything. Is reading. What are some, I guess, like top books that you would have or recommend for that like area of expertise, like branding and marketing for creatives?
Well, I think I would recommend for branding and marketing, I would recommend, as opposed to reading, I think there's a lot of prerequisites to branding and marketing. I think what you should read would be biographies and autobiographies of great artists and cultural movers. So, you know, I would rather you read Malcolm X's autobiography than the latest, greatest marketing book, you know, because the marketing becomes really simple when you know what the fuck you're about. The copywriting writes itself, you know. I just taught this course on Saturday. We have this course called I Am the Narrator. And the idea is you have writing. And a lot of people take writing classes and read books about writing and learn all these writing techniques. And it's like all well and good. However, all the writing tactics in the world are not going to help if you don't have a clear imagination and take time to reflect on it. And you can't have a clear imagination or set aside time to reflect on it unless you have a super healthy mental state and you're either in therapy or you're doing things that cultivate mental wellness. So the act of writing becomes a result of clear mental health, reflection and imagination. And then writing is just a result of those things. And branding is just a result of those things. And you really can't help yourself, you know, like you can't help yourself when you have that kind of clarity on yourself and what makes you tick, what makes you happy, what makes you sad. Then you're just documenting. And I think for artists, that is branding.
I love that. Yeah. So it's not even really like its own thing. It's just you finding a way to like be vulnerable and open and just being able to share what what your story is. Like that itself is the brand, right? I love that. That's amazing. Perfect. Awesome. And then I guess just lastly, what is, you know, the message that you hope people take from your work, you know, let's say like later on in life when you're no longer around and everything that you've created still exists in this world. What do you hope that people take away from it when they see it or view it or whatever it looks like?
Don't solve problems, create them.
Definitely. I love it. That's amazing. Perfect, Dominic. Well, thank you so much. It's been so great talking to you again. Thank you so much for being so active within our community. It's been so awesome. I'm really excited to share this one with everybody. You have a lot of really great tips and I think kind of eye-opening to kind of look at things in a different, you know, perspective than we most of us would even see them. So that's awesome. And then please feel free to share with us if you have any more events or anything, and I can share it with the community. I know you host a lot of workshops.
I appreciate you posting that. We did. We're going to actually release the replay of that. That's going to be available to purchase pretty soon. I'm going to do it, I think, for Small Business Saturday, but it comes with worksheets. It's only a couple hours, but it's really concentrated stuff. It's really good. Just in terms of like what I'm talking about, cultivating imagination. That's all part of the experience of the workshop. The other thing I wanted to say is we're announcing this for the first time here, but Soulmatter is opening a studio in the Arts District in downtown
That's
LA.
Awesome.
So we'll be very excited to interface with you guys at SADA and, you know, other artists in the LA environment.
That would be amazing. And I know we're looking forward to, you know, in the future when things kind of clear up a bit COVID wise, to kind of doing some in-person events. So maybe we can hook up with you guys and kind of, you know, bring those two together.
I'm super down. You have my number.
That would be amazing. Awesome. Well, great. Thank you so much, Dominic. It's been so great. I'll definitely keep in touch and definitely keep in touch with me if you have any events in the meantime that we can kind of help promote and stuff for you and share with our community.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Of course. And if anybody is watching and has any questions for Dominic, where can they reach you at? Any like email, or do you prefer
Yeah.
social media?
Best place to find me for that kind of stuff is probably Instagram. It's at
Hmm.
Dominic DiMaria. I'll send you links so you have everything on hand. And then
Perfect.
our website is soulmatter.co. So that's a great place to connect with us as well.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so everybody make sure you go head over to see Dominic and ask any questions if you have them. He's definitely very knowledgeable, so I would definitely recommend going and having conversations with him. And other than that, we have Conversation Fit tomorrow for everybody who's watching, or for you, Dominic. It's going to be more of a kind of Q&A, kind of getting to know the community type situation, a little bit more chill and relaxed as we're entering our digital community that's coming out on Monday. So that's really exciting, just kind of like decompressing and talking about that situation.
Yeah.
So that'll be really cool. And then obviously we're also looking for event hosts at the moment. So if anybody's watching, or Dominic as well, if you have an event you would like to host in a collaboration with us, essentially we're just pairing up with other creatives who are already throwing or looking into throwing a digital event. And we're just going to basically be promoting it for you for the community. So if anybody's interested in that, I will put a link down below where you can apply. And other than that, I look forward to the next episode of Deconstructing the Narrative. And I look forward to seeing you guys all soon. Thank you so much. Bye, Dominic.
Thanks, Erica. Appreciate you.